Ever stop to think about what actually goes into the price of sugar? It's in pretty much everything we eat, but getting it from a field in Brazil to your kitchen, well, that's a whole different story. Today, we're going to crack the code on one of the world's most important crops, Brazilian sugarcane. Let's get into it. So, just to give you a sense of scale here, try to wrap your head around this number. In just one harvest, Brazil cranked out 657 times million tons of sugarcane. That is just a mind-boggling amount, and it makes what happens there a huge deal for the entire planet. And here's the thing, it's not just about sweetening your coffee. Brazil's sugarcane industry makes it a giant in two really critical markets. It's number one in the world for sugar, obviously, but it's also number two for ethanol, which is a massive biofuel. So the price of sugarcane, yeah, that affects both what you eat and what you put in your car.
Okay, so that brings us to the big mystery. With an industry this huge, figuring out what makes the price tick is super important for, well, everyone, from the farmers on the ground to big-time investors. But as you're about to see, it's one heck of a complicated puzzle.
I mean, just look at this chart. It looks like a tangled mess of spaghetti, right? Each of those colorful lines is a different cost. We're talking fuel, labor, fertilizer, you name it, and they're all just bouncing around like crazy over the years. The real challenge is trying to figure out which of these squiggles actually matters. And that's the exact question a group of researchers wanted to answer. Out of all these moving parts, which ones are just background noise and which ones are the real heavy hitters that actually drive the price of sugarcane? To figure it out, they put together a lineup of 12 key suspects. You can see them here. We've got everything from the price of diesel and different fertilizers to specific pesticides and, of course, the cost of labor. The big question is, who's the real culprit? So, to crack this code, they didn't just throw darts at a board. Nope, they brought in a really powerful statistical tool to find the hidden connections buried in all that messy data. They used a technique called multiple linear regression. Now, that sounds fancy, but you can just think of it as a clue-finding machine. You feed it all 12 of your suspects at once, and it crunches the numbers to see which ones have the strongest, most consistent link to the sugarcane price. It's all about finding the signal in the noise. And this wasn't just some quick analysis. This clue-finding machine had a lot of work to do. It churned through 6 full years of monthly price data, searching meticulously for the real patterns hiding under the surface. And after all that number crunching, the machine gave its answer. And get this, out of all 12 suspects, it turns out only 4 really mattered in a statistically significant way. Just 4 things that explain more than 90% of the price changes. So let's meet our culprits. First on the list, a specific type of insecticide. Now, this one makes perfect sense, right? You've got to protect your crops from pests. So when the cost of that protection goes up, it gets passed along, and the price of sugarcane goes up too. Simple. Our second culprit is a herbicide used to kill off weeds that compete with the sugarcane. And again, this is a pretty straightforward connection. Keeping the crop healthy and weed-free costs money, and that cost is baked right into the final price. No surprises there. And the third major factor is good old-fashioned people power, the cost of a daily laborer. Growing sugarcane takes a lot of manual work, so it's only natural that as wages increase, the overall cost to produce a ton of the stuff goes up with it. Okay, so far, so logical, right? 3 direct costs that push the price around. But that fourth and final factor the model picked out, well, it was completely counterintuitive, and it revealed a really fascinating twist in how this whole market operates. The last, and honestly the most surprising factor was diesel oil. Now, you'd think that if the fuel for tractors and trucks gets more expensive, the price of sugarcane would have to go up too, right? But the data showed the exact opposite. When diesel prices go up, the price paid for sugarcane actually tends to go down. I mean, how is that even possible? Well, this is where it gets cool, because it shows the 2 faces of sugarcane. Remember how it's used to make ethanol? In Brazil, cars can run on either diesel or ethanol. So when diesel gets pricey, drivers switch over to the cheaper option, ethanol. That creates a huge surge in demand for ethanol, which in turn makes its raw material, sugarcane, way more valuable, pushing its price up. It's a wild demand-side effect that's stronger than the direct cost of fuel. All right, so now that we know the key drivers, can we actually use that knowledge to predict the future? That's the million-dollar question, and it's exactly what the researchers tried to do next. To deal with all the uncertainty in the market, they used another cool tool, the Monte Carlo simulation. Basically, it's a forecasting machine that runs thousands and thousands of what-if scenarios based on past data. So it doesn't just give you one single number. Instead, it gives you a certainty range, the most likely window where prices will probably fall. And here's what that actually looks like. For a producer, these charts are incredibly useful. Instead of just guessing, they get a probability map, that blue shaded area, that shows them the most likely price range for both their crop and one of their biggest costs. That is a massive advantage when you're trying to manage risk. So armed with their 4 key factors, the researchers built a model to forecast prices for the next year, 2021. The model's prediction was, well, pretty calm. It projected a slight, steady increase in prices. It was a neat, clean, logical forecast based on 6 years of solid data. But reality didn't get the memo. In 2021, the world got slammed by the pandemic fallout, crazy weather, and runaway inflation. The result? The real price of sugarcane didn't just go up a little bit. It shot through the roof, completely blowing the model's predictions out of the water. It's a perfect reminder that even the smartest models can get blindsided by real-world chaos. So what are the big takeaways here? Well, first, we cracked the code. The price of sugarcane isn't a total mystery after all. It really boils down to 2 key pesticides, labor costs and the price of diesel. Second, we learned about that fascinating backward relationship with diesel, all thanks to ethanol. And finally, and maybe most importantly, we got a humbling lesson that while our models are amazing for understanding the past, the future is always going to be a bit wild and unpredictable. And that really leaves us with a final massive question. In a world that just seems to be getting crazier and more volatile, how do we balance the incredible insights we get from data with the raw, unpredictable nature of reality? It's a challenge that goes way beyond sugarcane, and it's something we're all going to have to grapple with.